There's a kitten on that porch. I wish to be its friend. Hey, kitty. All right. Anyway, welcome to another adventure in the Calumet wilderness with Sam Love. I am your Sam Love. Happy 4th of July. I'm up here on the Hammond / Robertsdale / Whiting border doing soil testing. And so this is going to be an interesting one. This might also prove to be the rootinest, tootinest, shootinest, pollutinest episode I've ever done. So much so it probably could have been an eerie adventure, even though it's the 3rd of July today. And this isn't going to be a complete history of this area or the environment, because I do want to keep these entries fairly short, but I hope to give an outline at least. And then I'll put a bunch of links in the description box where you can start digging in on your own, because there have been quite a few good things written about this, but nobody seems to never seems to be the right pressure, you know? Nobody seems to care enough. I'm going to rephrase that. It's like the people with the power to do something just don't seem to care enough quite often. Even though we can see the evidence of the pollution and poisoning all around us here. This might be as region as it gets, friends. Look at that. Late 1930s, Federated Metals opened. It's the Depression in an industrial area, so of course, jobs. All that black shit falling out of the sky, that's money, that's jobs. And this goes on until 1980. That particular factory's closed. And there's been a couple manufacturers in part of the property since then, but nobody can get any straight answers about anything. Or if they can, they're just filing that away and keeping it secret from the residents out here. So the issue out here, I mean, it's the pollution of the soil, but it's also the pollution of the water and pollution of the air, which gets a lot harder to prove. You know, where there's pollution in the water, and so where's it coming from? You know, so many questions. And there have been some remediation of yards here. It's quite expensive. Not that we couldn't come up with the money to fix this for people, but instead we've got a couple dozen remediated over the past few years, mostly for people with children, expecting mothers. You know, they should be our highest priority, of course. But there's all kinds of other issues going on here. You know, maybe you got someone who's older, won't be as affected by lead in the soil. What if they want to sell their property, which they'll have to someday? New fire station, I think. There's a lot going on around this. By no means is this a forgotten area. I don't think it ever was. You know, the residents of Robertsdale and Whiting generally kept all their properties up. Storefronts are occupied. In fact, this community here was recently rated one of the best for walking and bicycling, and that's going to make it very attractive to young families who are more than likely to have small children who will be affected by the environmental conditions in this ground here. So to me, it really doesn't matter, you know, the age and that. Get this shit addressed, get it fixed. Let's be honest with ourselves. You know, and the role I've got right now is very little we can do outside palliative care, if I may use that analogy. We can test and advise on, you know, best practices, but the lack of any political power, what the hell can any of us do? I'll leave it there. And I'll tell you, the kind of genius I am, I knew that these soils have a high level of lead. One of the tests we did last year came back 600 parts per million, and I brought protective gloves with as I'd be digging in. Don't let me touch my face during this episode. Pretty sad to see evidence of kids playing, or see kids playing directly, and know that if they do what kids are programmed to do, dig into that ground, it could be lifelong consequences for that. So we are finally getting a look at the third lake in Lake County that bears the name of George. So we've done it, all three. Of course, we visited Lake George in Hobart a number of times, and that Lake George is, of course, just deep river dammed up. And then there was the old Lake George that exists on some of the old maps in the area of basically from Griffith over to Munster. You know, was that a permanent lake, or was it just an area that took on a lot of water during the wet season? I don't know, but some maps refer to that as a Lake George. As much as I hate counterfactuals and alternative histories, let's just think for a second here, for a minute, what this area would have been like if the recreational possibilities and not the heavy industrial possibilities had been developed. And I don't care that most of us wouldn't have been here. That's not the point of this counterfactual. But you think we'd have a lake district like what you see at the kettle ponds around Valparaiso, LaPorte. Obviously the geology of these lakes would be quite different, but we'd have a very much larger Lake Calumet, very much larger Wolf Lake. And there was Hyde Lake, which today sort of been channelized into Indian Creek. Then you'd have this George Lake, and of course Wolf Lake. Did I already mention that one? And then Berry Lake, which was the easternmost one, and today that's all the refinery. The rain is starting again. The most recent thing, though, to bring attention to the issue out here was a series of bird kills that were noticed in 2018 and 2021. You know, and when all was said and done, you know, no straight answers about what killed these birds. I mean, elevated levels of lead were found, thinking about a half dozen swans, but nothing to go further to say this is what caused it. You know, was it from eating out of this water body here, you know, eating contaminated plants growing out of contaminated soils, and the people responsible, you know, they play a nice back and forth game. It was them. No, it was them. People are out using it, though. And the politicians, I'm not going to say nothing about them. So cheers to the local folks who've been trying their hardest. So there's a pier here into the marsh that can be accessed from outside the golf course. Go check that out. There's some people out there fishing. Don't think I'm going to walk around the what was historically the lake bed, because it is warm and muggy and the air is not good. So it's kind of wearing me down. Well, as beautiful as this is maybe only a sixth of what George Lake originally was. In fact, this went all the way well beyond 129th down to where the George Lake Canal is. Y'all, it is muggy out here. Look at this. I never used to sweat when I was a teenager and a young adult. It's not even that hot out. Actually gives us a sense of what it would have looked like before it was all altered and filled in and developed. I mean, a lot of green life this time of year, not as much open water. You know, you really wouldn't have been able to tell what was terra firma and what was wetland out here back in the days before development. Currently, there is discussion to put the old Federated Metals site on, or to designate it as a Superfund site. I don't exactly know where that stands or what people's opinions about that around here are. I've seen some in favor and others not so much. So we will see what happens on that. Where does it all go? I do not know. Where do I go next? Don't know that either. But have a happy 4th of July.